Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be tracking a truly dark yet absolutely fascinating historical journey. We're looking up the massive transformation of the Soviet Union. We're going from a period of surprising economic recovery in the 1920s straight into the absolute crushing dictatorship of Joseph Stalin. It's a crazy story of how rapid policy shifts, deep-seated ideological paranoia, and just this relentless drive for industrialization escalated into one of the most terrifying periods in human history. And honestly, understanding this era is absolutely crucial because it shows us exactly how fast a society can slip from relative normalcy into total, absolute totalitarianism. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is the roadmap we'll use to trace this dramatic escalation across 6 distinct phases. First, the brief capitalist thaw. 2, Stalin's rise to power. 3, the war on the peasantry. 4, the utopian nightmare. 5, the cult of belief. And finally, the Great Terror. Starting with Section 1, the brief capitalist thaw, the new economic policy. If you were to drop into the Soviet Union in the early 1920s, right after the total devastation of the Civil War, you wouldn't necessarily see a strict communist utopia. You'd actually see something resembling a surprisingly vibrant period of capitalist normalcy. And this was all thanks to the new economic policy, or the NEP. Private trade responded almost instantly to years of chronic shortages. Suddenly, flea markets were just booming. Private cafes, shops, and restaurants were springing up everywhere. And out of all this emerged a newly rich class of private traders known as the netmen. They were totally flaunting their newfound wealth, dressing in diamonds and furs, driving imported cars. But for ordinary workers, this was disgusting. They started throwing away their party cards by the thousands, bitterly joking that NEP actually stood for the new exploitation of the proletariat. This tension perfectly highlights the ideological split that practically paralyzed the Bolsheviks. They had hit this massive wall called the scissors crisis, basically a widening gap between super cheap agricultural prices and skyrocketing prices for factory goods. On the left wing, you had Leon Trotsky. He argued for keeping agricultural prices low, taking grain by force, and just rapidly boosting industry. On the flip side, on the right wing, Nikolai Bukharin wanted to raise prices to keep the peasants happy and preserve the state's alliance with them, even if it meant slowing down industrialization. They just completely disagreed on how to modernize a backward nation. Which brings us to Section 2, Stalin's rise to power, the gray blur. While Trotsky and Bukharin were having these high-minded theoretical debates, someone else was quietly taking over the machine from the inside, a guy who was originally dismissed by his peers as a mere gray blur. Let's look at the timeline here, starting in 1922, to see how this builds. Joseph Stalin was appointed General Secretary, a job everyone else thought was incredibly mundane. Just paperwork, right? But as Lenin's health failed throughout 1922 and 1923, Stalin patiently accumulated power. He didn't win through brilliant speeches. He won by managing the bureaucracy. He was bugging the private phones of senior officials, building secret dossiers detailing his comrades' weaknesses, and steadily placing his own allies in key regional jobs. By the time Lenin died in 1924, Stalin was perfectly positioned to deliver the Great Oath to continue Lenin's work. He cast himself as the ultimate disciple, while his rivals completely, totally underestimated him. So, how did Stalin secure this massive base? The secret sauce was the nomenklatura. By controlling the party apparatus, Stalin appointed thousands of senior officials. Now, these weren't highly educated Marxist theorists. They were down-to-earth, humble men who really mistrusted intellectuals like Trotsky. In exchange for their cushy appointments, they gave Stalin their absolute, unquestioning loyalty. He essentially built a massive patronage network that formed the bedrock of his power. Now, here's the crazy part. Lenin actually saw the danger Stalin posed, but it was just too late. Before he died, Lenin dictated his testament, explicitly warning that Stalin was too rude and ruthless, and he recommended his immediate removal from power. But the party leaders, who were obsessed with maintaining a unified front, chose to keep it secret. They literally hid Lenin's dying warning in a drawer. Let's move to Section 3, War on the Peasantry, Collectivization. Having defeated his rivals, Stalin dramatically shifted gears in 1928. The capitalist thaw was entirely over. It was time for a radical, violent shift to crush the wealthier peasants, who they branded as kulaks, and force everyone into state-controlled collective farms. The peasantry, understandably, did not go quietly. They were terrified of losing a way of life their families had lived for centuries. Rather than surrender their property to the state, the peasants fought back in the only way they really could, by slaughtering their own livestock. The economic resistance was catastrophic. We're talking about a staggering 50% drop in cattle across the entire Soviet Union between 1928 and 1933.
But the human cost of this war on the peasantry, well, you just have to take a breath and consider this next reality. Up to 8.5 million people died. Deprived of their best farmers and with the state aggressively requisitioning what little grain was actually produced, the countryside plunged into a horrific famine. This includes the Holodomor in Ukraine, a starvation so devastating it left a bitter legacy of hatred that echoes right up to this day.
This leads us to Section 4, the utopian nightmare, the 5-year plans. As rural Russia was starving, this paradoxical push for rapid industrialization was unfolding at the exact same time in the cities. The state was demanding impossible, frankly utopian rates of growth. To justify these impossible targets, the state had to create myths. Take the shock worker Alexei Stakhanov. He supposedly mined 102 metric tons of coal in just 6 hours. That's 14 times his normal quota. The state used this supposedly heroic feat to create a mass movement, pressuring all workers to match these impossible standards. In reality, it just created pure chaos, forcing managers to falsify their statistics just to survive. But there was an even darker side to this rapid industrialization. 100,000. That is the number of prisoners forced into the Gulag just to build the White Sea Canal by 1932. They were handed primitive tools, crudely fashioned axes and saws, and literally worked to death in the freezing cold. This utopian progress was built on the frozen bones of slave labor. Yet the state masked all of this horror with dazzling, over-the-top propaganda. Projects like the Moscow Metro perfectly captured that illusion. For citizens who were living in squalid, super-crowded communal apartments, walking into these cathedral-like stations was intoxicating. It was proof that the 5-year plans were actually working. It convinced them that they were successfully building a worker's paradise and that all their daily hardships were just a necessary sacrifice for a brilliant future. That brings us to Section 5, the cult of belief, myth over reality. Now, you might be wondering, how did the Soviet people maintain their faith amidst such brutal hardship, famine, and state violence? The answer lies in the sheer psychological power of belief. Listen to the words of Dmitry Streletsky. This was a man whose family was stripped of absolutely everything and deported to a labor camp just to meet a local quota. He notes that it made life much easier to bear, believing in the justice of Stalin. It took away their fear. Even for the victims, the myth of Stalin as a protective, czar-like father figure was a psychological survival mechanism. It was simply easier to accept that myth than to face the terrifying reality of a random, cruel machine. And finally, Section 6. The Great Terror, Paranoia Consumes. This is the absolute climax of our escalation arc. This is where the revolution turns entirely on itself, and absolute paranoia consumes the whole country during the Great Terror. The triggers for this terror happened incredibly fast. In 1932, a document called the Rutan Platform secretly circulated, heavily criticizing Stalin. Later that year, a massive personal tragedy struck. Then, in 1934, a popular rival named Sergei Kirov was assassinated. Stalin used this assassination as the perfect excuse to launch an emergency decree, leading directly to the infamous public show trials of 1936 to 1938. This is where the founding fathers of the revolution were tortured into confessing to these absurd conspiracies before being shot. I want to pause on that personal tragedy from 1932, the shocking suicide of Stalin's wife, Nadezhda Allilueva, deeply unhinged him. Following a tense dinner party where Stalin rudely goaded her, she went to her room and shot herself, leaving a note criticizing his policies. This intensely personal betrayal solidified Stalin's paranoid conviction that enemies were literally everywhere, even in his own bedroom. This paranoia trickled down to every single corner of society, creating a terrifying informer culture. Institutions operated under Krugovaya Praduka, collective responsibility. If one person was deemed a traitor, your whole group could be punished. This forced millions to eagerly denounce their own neighbors and friends just to save themselves. And under the terrifying concept of objective guilt, your actual intentions didn't even matter. If the state decided your actions hindered the revolution, you were guilty. The police simply drew up mass repression lists with quotas for executions. We've tracked an incredible escalation today, from booming flea markets to mass execution lists. But as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, haunting question. How does extreme hardship and terror drive people to fervently believe in the very system oppressing them? It's a sobering reminder of the terrifying power that myth, utopian hope, and absolute fear can hold over the human mind, even today. Think on that, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.